Alicia, I'm Henrimae Bell, currently fine artist. I was born in Cordia, Georgia, educated in Cordia, Georgia. After graduating from high school, I went to Albany State College where I met the love of my life and still have him.
Okay.
But we eventually moved to New York for career purposes. In New York, we both worked for IBM, and which exposed us to travel, worldwide travel. And through traveling, I discovered many people of different cultures almost around the world, and had staff people who were also in different countries, speaking different languages, different foods, and just different cultures. That excited me extremely. It just excited me. It motivated me to want to capture some of that.
Okay.
Coming up in a rural town like Cordia, I just took my ability to draw as just something a child would normally accept.
Okay.
The first time I experienced that, however, I was in the 4th grade at A.S. Clark, and one of the instructors took us out back and said, draw what you see, just anything you see. And my interpretation of what I saw was that there was a farm in back of A.S. Clark. There was a fence, an old broken down wagon, and a barn. So I drew that, and it was my discovery that I could express myself visually on paper. She raved about it, and I felt pretty proud about it too.
I'm sure.
But that's what introduced me to, well, you know, this, no training, but this is something that I truly enjoyed and I could do without much effort. But I was encouraged to draw by my mother and my cousin. However, drawing wasn't going to make me a living.
Right.
I needed to go off and get a job.
Okay.
So therefore, as we went to, after we left Albany State, my husband was immediately employed by IBM. A year later we were married and we went to New York. And when we got to New York, I joined IBM as well. But as an artist, I spent most of my time just dilling and dabbling in watercolors when I traveled or just playing around. And I went to Iona College later in life,
okay,
where I took some art courses as electives because it was a fun thing to do. But however, it was just a fun thing for me to do. I never forgot that I could do it. And even though I may have stopped for a long period of time, whenever I picked up a brush or a pen, I could pick up just where I left off.
Wow. Wow.
However, my focus was on a career. And I built a fairly successful career within corporate headquarters in IBM. But when traveling, worldwide travel, I had staff in England, the UK, and France. And across the U.S. During my spare time, I would visit the museums in those countries or other places, or I had my little watercolors to keep me occupied when I didn't want to prepare for work in the evening. So that kept me going.
Okay.
One of the highlights of my career was I worked in an area once in HR where we developed a plan for teaching other IBMers how to plan to retire.
Okay.
I was quite young, but I came away from that with planning for myself.
Okay.
And one of the things I learned is once you retire, you can't wait to decide what you're going to do. You should be working on it as you move along.
Okay.
And when I searched my soul to say what would I want to do if I wasn't working for a living or depending on the results of what I do to give me money, art was the only thing that came natural to me.
Okay.
So as we climb Maslow's ladder of success, self-actualization is what I focus on for me.
Okay.
And decided to start to take art courses officially in the local colleges, study with other professionals that I became familiar with. So when I retired, I immediately gave myself to the arts.
Okay. Okay.
And using my faith,
Okay.
using my travel, and using my experience as an African American woman, this is what we come to.
It's interesting that you mentioned your experience as an African American woman, because I noticed that as a theme in much of your art. Are these real women to you, or are they fictitious or symbolic women?
Mostly all of them are symbolic. I
Okay.
am not, when I do portraits, I've done a portrait of my mother and of my husband, but all the work that I do, they're coming from within me.
Okay.
And a number of them are pieces in hats, because it symbolizes the black church. I was born Baptist, and remembering my mother and my grandmother, we would prepare on Saturday for church on Sunday, because Sundays were doing nothing but church. No cooking, no nothing. And my mother would lay out her outfit for the next day. So she got up and got showered or took a bath and was dressed, and everything was color coordinated. So this is my tribute to them for that lesson in my life. Prepare Saturday night, because Sunday morning was about church.
Okay. So we'll see that in much of your artwork as well.
Yes.
What has brought you back to Southwest Georgia?
The love of family.
Okay.
The pure love of family. I've been blessed, my husband and I, to travel the world, to live in New York for over 40 years, to have corporate headquarters experience and all the things that come along with that. So that took me away from being the daily interaction with family. Now in my life, less than 2 years ago, I lost my mother, and I'm an only child. So family, although I had a great relationship with my mother, but family is my life now, and they're all right here in Cordele, Georgia. While I did not have any birth siblings, my mother raised one of her nieces, Henrimae Redding Cornelius, and Minnie had 6 children, and those became my mother's grandchildren, and Minnie and my mother have passed, so I am the link to them and our ancestry. So the love of them, and to come here and to interact with the babies. Yesterday, we've got one that's turning a year old on the 23rd of May, all the way up to adulthood. And about 12 of them came yesterday on Mother's Day, just to spend some time. And it was the best Mother's Day I could have prayed for, is to have those children in this house. And if I wasn't here, that would not have happened.
There's the sustainability of the piece, so we know that is here. But how do you transfer the skill? How do you ensure that skill is not lost in future generations?
Just plain loving. Showing the young people that someone other than their direct parents love and care for them. I'm about kindness. Everybody come in here, they have to hug me. And I've got 3 of the great-great-grands that sat at this table, and we're doing artwork together. And hopefully over time I'm able to expand that to include other children. But through that artwork, my intentions is to just show them love is the answer. And not only to receive it, but you have to have some responsibility to give it and pass it on to others, because that's what was passed down to us.
I understand that some of your work is in museums. Can you tell us about that?
In galleries, yes.
Galleries,
the over in St. Helena Island, the Red Piano, which is a very historical building because it's near the first African American school. And if you know anything about the Geechee St. Helena's, those are people from Sierra Leone that were replanted in that area because of their abilities to grow rice and make weave baskets. But it's a very historical area over there because it also has the first free African American school. We're right down from that historical location is the Red Piano. So I feel very honored to have my work represented in that gallery. In New York, the Flatiron Gallery up in Peekskill is the place where my work is. And I now am working toward putting some pieces in Florida, in Ugali, Florida.
Okay.
The significance of Ugali is a place that Zola Neale Hudson used to write when she was developing her books.
Okay.
But so I want to be in places that have a significance to me.
Okay.
And the Lord seems to be opening those areas up for me.
Okay. We have a Crisp Area Arts Alliance. Is there an interest to connect locally?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. I would love to be able to either work out of the arts alliances with children, or maybe have some shows there, or work with others who would like to know how to put on shows. Because I'm sure there are many artists right here locally, and art is an expression of what you feel, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So if someone didn't like my work, I am not offended by that. But those that do and want it, and they have shown that they do, I'm delighted by that too, because it helps to buy the supplies. The paints and brushes and papers and canvases cost a lot.
Okay. Speaking of cost a lot, do you think that is an art form that might be considered exclusive because of the expense of it, and so you may not have as many minorities who are involved in the arts as you might have of those of the dominant culture, just because of the expense of it?
I think you are right on to something. However, I think it's a process of education. And I think when we start to educate our young people, how important it is to make that investment in one piece of original art. It may be a stretch at this time, but if you look at some of the arts that have gone on auction, you don't buy it for the investment. You buy it because you want it to touch your heart. If you wake up in the morning and see a piece, and each morning it speaks to you, it is certainly worth it. But it is very nice when the value goes up. And you've seen on the news some pieces that multi-million-dollar pieces. Artists died as paupers, but their works went up later in life. But even if I would love to encourage all young people to invest in one small piece, and once the bug hit them, it will increase. And if you can't find an original, a print is good too, but a print of an original.
Great. We have a strong interest in inclusive community building. How can art reflect inclusive community building, whether in a project or whether in the piece itself? How can art reflect inclusion?
Well, a couple of ways come to mind for me. I worked with the Freedom School project in New York, and one of the things we did was it was a 5-week program. Once a week, we went to all the famous museums in the New York City area, and one in the Brooklyn Museum, we had a group of children. We gave them the canvas and the paper and told them to create a piece, but it was a team piece. So everyone had to, based on what they'd seen, so everyone had to go in and make a line or two or color something. And in the end, the work was beautiful. We had an art show at the end of the session. We sold the art for donations back toward Freedom School, and the one piece that fetched the highest amount, and I believe it was $1,200, was done by a group of young people at that museum. Now, also, I do reflect who I am in my art, but I go beyond that as well. I have a piece called Family that's here on the wall that represent Mother Hale, who took in crack babies many years ago and raised them when we weren't sure how they were going to be raised. Mother Hale became very famous in Harlem. And this piece, do you mind if I turn? This piece represents Mother Hale's love for the crack babies, and my tribute to her. But that's a black child and a Hispanic child with Mother Hale. So inclusion, when I travel, I have pieces that represent France. I just got back from Vietnam, where we spent 2 weeks, It is my intent, I took over 1,000 pictures, it is my intent to interpret that culture.
Okay.
I have traveled throughout Europe,
Okay.
working and on a personal level, throughout the South Seas, Bora Boras,
Okay.
Tahiti, that whole genre.
Okay.
We've done just about all of Europe, and
wow.
great deal of Africa, West Africa, South Africa, Egypt. So all the places that I visit, my intent is to incorporate either the food, the landscape, or the people in my art.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask if we can take a brief tour.
Represent landscapes of the French countryside, and this one came up in my mind because it's a church, but I've seen the pines as we've traveled in small chapels. We love flowers. This is amber in the hair of an African woman,
Okay.
wherein they are represented by their riches by amber and cattle, but the amber represents that particular tribe in Africa. Again, this one is called Walking by Faith and Not by Sight. If you notice, all the ladies, their eyes are closed, but they're on the move, and that's a part of my heritage around the world. People in the Caribbean, Africa, and Southern America who walk by faith and not by sight.
Okay, wonderful.
I named this one The Fitting, and someone asked me, what happens if she moved her hand? Well, she don't want to do that. But again,
wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah, a wardrobe malfunction. But again, what it reminded me of is I created this some time ago, right after Barack Obama became President of the United States. So red, white, and blue became a little bit more significant to me.
Okay.
And the shapes of stars started to form. They're not there yet,
Okay.
but that's what that one represents to me. This is my godchild who turned 8 years old this year, and I did this piece to represent her. She is Christian Nicole Smith, but Christian loves pink, and she is all little girl, so she says it's her.
Okay. Okay.
Sunday hats. I have a whole series of women in hats, but they are, again, representative of First Sundays and going to church on Sundays and dressing in your finest and just representing. This is a sister we all know. I have a love for flowers, and these all hats in here are representative of the African American church. Sisters. Well, Peace Be Still is the title of this one, where you're just closing your eyes and peace must come. First Sunday, fourth Sunday brunch. You remember, I remember going out on Saturday night, having a real good time and coming in a little late, but had to go to church on Sunday. And the hat really was a wonderful camouflage. For a Saturday night good time, but was in church on Sunday.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite pieces here. It is called The Preacher Woman.
Okay.
She's has the hat on, but in front of a piece of stained glass. But more and more, the women are preaching the word, and always have, but in a more formal fashion now.
Okay. Okay.
Sophisticated lady in orange speaks for itself. She's just sophisticated.
Okay.
This piece at the bottom is entitled, I've Come This Far by Faith. And when you see the church in the background and the path that we're walking,
Oh, wow.
that's what that represents.
Wow. Thank you, Ms. Henrimae Bell Henderson, for allowing us the opportunity to hear about your work as an artist and the opportunity to tour your gallery. And we certainly are happy that you have allowed indigoLife magazine and online to be the vehicle through which your story gets shared with Southwest Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I have one other piece, though, that I really would like to
Okay. Okay.
often. This one represents black men and their children. So often black men get accused of not being fathers, but we know better
Right.
if we are part of
That's
the
right.
community.
That's right.
And as a father holding his baby with love, the pillow in the back is a piece of kente cloth I got out of Africa
Okay.
that I brought back and wanted to incorporate some of that culture in that particular
Okay.
piece.
Okay. There again, we were saying the inclusion
The
in
inclusion.
your work.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you again, Ms.
Thank you.
Henrimae.
Thank you.